We're going to move into our first content session for the day, having reflected on the salons. Never before has building a community been so critical to growing brands, nurturing loyalty, and injecting heart and soul into a business. During this morning's session, we will hear from 6 people who are at the front lines of this radical shift in brand building, which is all about community. First, we will be joined by one of our most popular columnists on the business of fashion, Doug Stevens. Sometimes known as the retail prophet, Doug is a renowned retail industry advisor, author, and futurist. His progressive thinking has influenced some of the most recognizable global brands, including Google, Disney, BMW, Intel, Citibank, and Walmart. And for our first talk in the Building Community session, Doug will talk about the future of retail from commerce to community. Please welcome Doug Stevens.
Thank you. Good morning. It is truly an honor to be here. The last 2 years of working with Imran and his team at Business of Fashion have been fantastic. The only downside to all of this is that I don't have much time with you this morning. So if you'll indulge me, I'm just going to jump right into it. The number that you see on the screen behind me is the estimated number of stores that are going to close in the United States in 2017. Thank you very much. That's not all. In fact, there's more going on, right? We're seeing this what we are now calling the retail apocalypse, right? That's the popular narrative now, is that we're entering retail Armageddon. We're seeing store closures in the US, we're seeing them across Europe's high streets, and meanwhile, e-commerce continues to grow. In 2016, there was $1.9 trillion was transacted online. And if the $1.9 trillion doesn't impress you, which it may not because you don't really have much to compare it to, what should really blow you away is the growth of that number, because it represents about a 24% year-on-year growth factor. So just an astonishing level of growth. To put a point on it, we're sort of seeing this trajectory now where this is just becoming commonplace. Each year, we see this enormous growth in the number of people that are shopping online, the number of dollars that are going online, and obviously, stores, many of them, are on the losing end of this. Just to sort of frame this for you, how many of you were sort of watching the numbers come in on Singles Day on November 11th? Yeah, quite a few of you. So Singles Day, for those of you that aren't aware, is a day when Chinese consumers largely are encouraged to go online and buy from companies like Alibaba.com. So in the first hour of Singles Day on November 11 this year, Alibaba.com alone sold $8.6 billion worth of merchandise.
Say what?
That's a lot of stuff, right? $8.6 billion. I actually had to try and wrap my head around how much that is. The way it works out is it's about $143 million a minute for every minute of the first hour of Singles Day. And just to put that into perspective for you, the average H&M sells about $42 million US a year. So in the first into the first minute of Singles Day, Alibaba.com was selling what 3 H&M stores do in a full fiscal year. And if that still isn't quite hitting home for you, think about it this way. In the first hour of Singles Day, Alibaba.com sold 2.5 times what every single retailer in the United States sold online on Black Friday. Right? Just to show you the magnitude of what is happening out there. Now, I don't want to try and tell you that e-commerce is all bad news. It's not, of course, because many of you, I'm sure, are working with companies that are growing your businesses with e-commerce. But what concerns me is that right now in the United States, 60 cents on every incremental dollar that gets spent online is going to one company, Amazon.com. The rest of the industry is now fighting over what is left. And much to a lot of retailers' chagrin, Amazon.com this year, according to the folks at Business of Fashion, will be the #1 seller of apparel in the United States. The challenge, it seems now, is not to convince consumers to buy things online. That was the challenge. Only about 10 years ago, companies were still trying to cajole consumers to come online and buy things like automobiles and food and prescription items and apparel. That is not the challenge anymore. Today, the challenge is to get the things that they're buying to them. And on Singles Day alone, 100,000 cars were sold on Alibaba.com. Right? So the challenge is now to get the things that consumers are buying to them in this ever-diminishing window of time. So we're seeing Amazon putting lockers on campuses and in apartment buildings so that consumers can pick their packages up 24/7. We're seeing the co-founders of Skype create this little 6-wheeled robot that's going through the streets of London delivering groceries as we speak. And of course, Jeff Bezos is saying, well, I'll just land a helicopter on your front porch with your package, get it to you very, very quickly. And so that is really the challenge now, is we've come to this point where people are wondering, when does this end? When does the meteoric growth of e-commerce slow down to the point of the rest of the retail industry, which really hasn't grown at above 6% on average for the last 10 years? And I think we're a long way away from that, in fact. The way I see it, we're sort of at the end of the beginning of e-commerce. I think if e-commerce were a book, we might have just finished chapter 1. And chapter 1 was Amazon, right? We've got a lot further to read on in this book. We know that there are technologies right now that are poised to propel e-commerce even further. I don't have to show you all kinds of charts and graphs to tell you that mobile is taking a greater and greater share of online traffic. I mean, just look around you, right? This is the world we live in, right? We are sort of together, alone, having our own little media experiences in the palm of our hands. We go to live events, and we become the film crew in our own lives. And then we go back to our hotel rooms and our homes, and we watch the videos as though we were never even there. It's kind of bizarre, isn't it? This, from what I understand, is the way the end of the world is going to look, just so you're fully prepared for that. Not 100% sure, but we think that could be the way it goes down. So, just so you know. But what lies beyond mobile? That's the question, right? Right now, we know that we're heading on to the cusp of the Internet of Things. This point where devices and sensors and technology is going to be built into more aspects of our lives. Pills that we swallow that talk to our pharmacists and our healthcare providers, our homes, our cars, our appliances, and yes, even our clothing will be connected, intelligent, and potentially even making transactions on our behalf. We're already starting to see this technology roll into the product environment. This Brita water filter, which you can buy from Amazon, reorders its own carbon cartridge when the carbon cartridge is no longer good. Because really, who wants to have to worry about that sort of thing, right? So Amazon will look after that for you, and it'll simply come when you need one. We are also starting to see more and more goods coming to consumers through subscription models, right? The idea that you simply sign up and you get more of whatever you need when you need it, another thing that you don't have to be concerned about or think about. And all of this is going to get easier now as we move into what we're calling conversational commerce. This notion that you have a device in your home that you simply speak to. You don't even need to point and click at pictures on the internet anymore. You simply speak your needs, and this always listening, always ready device is there to make the purchase for you. Now, this is going to morph, I think, beyond simply mobile or beyond the Internet of Things. I think that we're going to start to see more virtual experiences. I do think that we're going to start to see online shopping becoming more immersive, more tactile, more physical feeling as we move forward. And we're going to redefine what a store is. Because right now, an online store really isn't that exciting an experience. But moving forward, I see that we could be potentially in the experience making the purchase, that we are actually learning how to do the home improvement while we're buying the products to enable us to do that home improvement. The question is, when do these sorts of technologies move into the mainstream? And we got a little bit of a hint of that recently at a conference. Eric Sprunk, the COO of Nike, was asked by someone in the audience, when are we going to be able to just design our own shoes at home and then just print them? And he said, much to everyone's surprise, pretty soon. We're working on it. And he said in a very matter-of-fact way, and everyone was kind of, taken aback by that. I went and I spoke with this gentleman. His name is Joseph DeSimone. He's a PhD chemist, and he's one of the co-founders of a company called Carbon 3D in Silicon Valley. And Joe and his team have discovered a way to speed up the 3D printing process by up to 100 times, making it 100 times faster, and also using materials like rubbers and elastomerics and all kinds of different acrylics. That's actually what you see happening there is his process. And I said to Joe, is it conceivable that in 2017 a consumer could literally sit at home, design their own shoe and print it off and be wearing it an hour later? And he said, it's not only conceivable, he said, we're doing it. And these are the shoes. And we're working with Adidas. So, when people ask me what the future of shopping looks like, part of me sort of jumps to this apocalyptic view. And it's real. I mean, we're seeing this to some extent playing out. But the better part of me, my better angels, if you will, think, wait a minute, hang on a second. There's got to be more to this than just walking around my house, talking to my artificial intelligence and printing off my clothing, right? that sounds pretty dystopic. So I look at people shopping and I think, we wouldn't do this. We wouldn't line up outside a store and do a victory dance into the store unless there was something social about shopping, right? There's something deep within us as humans that requires us to want to experience human contact. I look at our physiological response to shopping. We know that when you have a great shopping experience, you actually get a shot of dopamine right to your cerebral cortex. And it's no different than sex. It's no different than drugs. It's no different than gambling. It's exactly the same physiological reaction that you have when you have a great shopping experience. And I also look at what's happening in the landscape. I see Amazon coming offline and opening up stores, and they're not alone. I see all of these other retailers opening physical shops. So if physical stores are really a thing of the past, then why are all these online retailers opening physical stores? And I think it's because, first of all, they recognize that you can't really fully actualize as a brand unless you have a physical, maybe even an emotional connection to a consumer. But I think they also recognize that as our lives become more and more driven by algorithms, right? As Facebook is telling me who I should like, and as Amazon is telling me what I should buy, and Spotify is telling me what I should listen to, and Netflix is telling me what I should watch on television tonight, that the idea for consumers to just simply discover something in a serendipitous way, to actually just have a shopping experience that maybe they didn't expect, to come across a product that they never knew existed, to connect with someone who's excited and passionate about that product, that we're going to crave more of those experiences, not fewer of them, as we become more and more technologically tethered. But we do, I think, have to recognize that we have to question the purpose of a store. In 2017, we have to look back and say, the store really hasn't changed. In over 100 years at least, the purpose of a store is fundamentally the same. And the way we plan stores and build them and stock them and manage them and measure them really hasn't changed all the way back to the great department stores of Europe. Everything is pretty much the same. So we have to look at what the new purpose is. And here's my theory. My theory is that what we're seeing happening in the marketplace is not binary. I don't think that as e-commerce grows, physical stores must die. I don't think that that's the case at all. But I do think as e-commerce grows, physical stores must change. And what I think we're actually witnessing happening is something quite historic. I think we're actually seeing media in all of its forms and mediums in all of their forms becoming the store. Media is becoming the store. So what does that mean? Right? It sounds a little convoluted. It's really quite simple. If we go back and we look at the way stores were built initially, and the purpose of a store, it was basically to stock a selection of products, to show consumers what you had to offer, to provide product information, and to fulfill transactions. That was it, right? But now, every single one of these forms of media is a direct path to doing that. I can shop through any of these means. I can see greater selections of product, perhaps. I can get more product information, and I can transact much more frictionlessly, right? So media is becoming the store. So what's the store? Why do we need stores? If media is fulfilling that function, what's the purpose of building a store? And my belief is just the opposite. I think that stores are becoming media. And I would argue vehemently that stores, in fact, are the most powerful, manageable, and measurable form of media that a brand or a retailer has at its disposal. But it means that we have to start thinking about this. We have to start thinking about retail in a much, much different way than we have in the past. The purpose of a store is no longer simply to distribute products. It can't be, right? The purpose of a store has to be distributing experiences with those products and with the people in those spaces. And so it's less about building stores and really more about building stories. This is a store in Germany called Globetrotter. Globetrotter sells outdoor gear, adventure gear, and it was actually opened by a man who was an adventurer. And so every inch of this store is an adventure. You can paddle a canoe, you can kayak, you can scuba dive, you can climb the walls, you can put on cold weather clothing and go into an Arctic chamber if you want, if that's what you're into. Or you can put on wet weather gear and get hammered with water. They'll spray you with water. So every inch of this store is a visceral experience, right? It's not just a static catalog of goods. This is a great story, if you will. A gentleman named Mickey Ashmore, who some of you might know, a Microsoft employee who was stationed in Istanbul, fell in love with a traditional form of footwear, which he called sabas, which is essentially a slipper. It's a form of footwear worn in the morning in Turkey. And he fell so in love with these shoes that he decided he was going to come back to North America and sell these. His first store, if you will, was his townhouse in New York, where he would invite people in, and in a very very casual way, he would introduce them to this footwear. It was so successful that he decided to open all kinds of other stores around the US. I think there are about 6 now, and they are exactly the same as his townhouse. He basically recreates his townhouse in various parts of the United States, in back alleys, in tiny little spaces, and consumers need to seek these out. When he talks about his business, he says, in fact, that his business is 50% retail, but it's also 50% community and hospitality. Other businesses are doing the same thing. Sonos, the maker of wireless speakers, opened a new store in New York. They decided not to do what you might imagine, and that is just feature their speakers on shelves and treat it as a traditional electronics store. Instead, they created these really cool 150 square foot listening pods where you could bring your own music, you could bring your friends, you could hang out, and you could have an awesome listening experience in the store. A few years ago, they took this concept even further. They're opening Sonos studios. They have a studio in London and one in LA. And this is really a community gathering point where artists, musicians, and other folks can just get together and create. We've seen adventures like Tom's Shoes in Venice Beach, where he opened a store and he said, I want this store to be different. I don't want this store to be about selling shoes. I just want to have it be a place where people can bring their dog, they can have a cup of coffee, they can do their work in the morning, and they can hang out and enjoy themselves. His business partners said, you're out of your mind. This is going to be a money pit. You're going to do nothing but lose money here. In fact, in 6 months, it was returning cash to the business. It's been a tremendous hit. We're seeing other examples, like Jennifer Bandier in New York. Jennifer was a music industry executive. She was actually the manager of TLC back in the day. And she found a way to combine her passion for music, for fashion, and for fitness in her store Bandier. And the real heart and soul of that store is Studio B, which she calls Studio B on the 3rd floor, where people gather to have classes with celebrity instructors and to have a great time with people who are passionate about the same things that she is passionate about. We're seeing things like my friend in Atlanta, Mark Toro, who builds shopping centers, but don't tell him he builds shopping centers. He will reject that. He says, look, I'm not in the shopping center business. I'm in the business of hospitality and entertainment. And when you go to one of his centers, if you're ever in Atlanta, please go to a center called Avalon. It will be like nothing that you've ever seen before. It really and truly is the heart of that community in Alpharetta, Georgia. Angela Ahrendts came from Burberry over to Apple, and one of the first things she did was she declared Apple stores town centers. They're no longer going to be simply places where you go to buy computers. They're going to be the heart of the communities in which they sit. They're going to be communal gathering places, that the store has much, much more weight and gravitas than simply being a point of distribution for Apple products. We're seeing things in Canada, like Frank and Oak, where they said, you know, it's not about a store, it's not about clothing, it's about a lifestyle. We'll have a cafe, we'll have a barber shop, we'll have a place where men can just come and hang out and have a good time and enjoy themselves, and it's something that they feel is a reflection of themselves and their lifestyle. We're seeing Nordstrom, traditional department store, doing crazy things like opening a 3,000 square foot Nordstrom local store in Los Angeles. And in this store, they don't have clothing. They don't merchandise any clothing. If you want to see something, they'll gladly bring it in for you. But what they do have is they have a bar, they have a cafe, they have a nail salon, they have a seamstress, they have a tailor on board, they have a stylist there to help you select what you want. So they've created an atmosphere that people, again, would just like to go and spend time in, as opposed to a place simply for the purposes of transactions. We're seeing this even happening online. Communities are being built online by companies like Sephora that host great communities, give people a place to converse and to learn and to share experiences about fashion and beauty. Now, all of this, I think, will help us connect with this generation, the creature of myth and legend, right? The millennial. We're trying to triangulate as an industry what the tastes and preferences of this demographic are. But what we do know, let's focus on what we do know. We do, of course, know that this generation is highly technologically connected. More so than any other generation that preceded them. They spend the most time online, they spend the most time on social media, and they're very adept and unafraid of technology. That said, we also know that more than 3/4 of them say that they would rather spend money on experiences than on products. And more of them claim that they are going to do so in the coming years. 55% say they intend to spend more on experiences than they have in the past. So what we're saying, in essence, is this is the first generation that really doesn't gauge itself so much by what it owns, but rather by where they are, who they are with, and what they're doing. That's really how they measure themselves in terms of social currency. And it's experiences that really translate well to social. Products, not so much, right? You can take a picture of your shoes and post them to Instagram, but what really plays well in social media are experiences, being somewhere, being with people, and doing things. So I always wonder, why can't the two come together? Why can't experiences and shopping come together? Retail seems to have a hard time doing that, but I want to show you an example of what happens when you bring those things together. This is anyone from Australia? Okay, a few of you. All right, so you might know about this store. So Sneaker Boy is a store in Australia. There are several of them. Chris Kvitos is the founder of Sneaker Boy. He's a really, really bright young entrepreneur. And I was talking with him just a few weeks ago, and he was telling me about a new store that they had opened. But let me give you a quick peek at Sneaker Boy. So they sell very high-end sneaker brands. Really, really great designer names, but they've also created a really cool concept. This looks nothing like your average running shoe store. They have one pair in each size in each style, so you can try on anything, and if you find what you like, then you simply order it. You don't walk out of the store with anything, okay? You order it and they ship it to you right away. He's got a lot of very, very cool concepts going on in the store, but he was telling me about this new Melbourne store opening. He said, we just opened a new store in Melbourne and it went really well. I said, really? That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Do you have any pictures you could send me? And he said, yeah. So he sent a couple of pictures. This was the first one that I opened up. That's a fire hazard, right? That's what that is, right? That is crazy. Like there must be thousands of people here. There's another view of the crowd. So when you combine this notion of community, and Chris really builds this huge community around these sneakerheads, as they're called, and you combine it with a great retail environment, and you combine it with great products, that's when I think you can really arrive at magic. I just want to leave you with one thought, and then I'm going to close off because we've got some really awesome speakers. How many of you know what this is? And if you don't, that makes you an elitist, right? It's a bus stop, right? It's a bus stop. I'm sure we've all, once or twice, been to a bus stop. And as you would expect, it's not very interesting, is it? I mean, it's very functional. You sit, you wait. If you choose to, you can stand, wait, the bus comes, and off you go. You get to where you want to go. But there's nothing inherently interesting or exciting about that. But most people wouldn't look at that and feel that it needs to be changed, right? Because it works, it functions. Much the way retail has functioned for the last 100 years. That's essentially the retail industry for the last 100 years. It worked, okay? But if someone were to come along and say, maybe, just maybe, we could make one small change that might make this feel and act differently, how could it look? Well, this is a bus stop too. This is a bus stop in Montreal. And the bus arrives and it takes you to where you want to get to. But along the way, you can have a wonderful, wonderful time. You can enjoy yourself as you see these people doing. So all it takes is one different perspective. All it takes is one single change, and you can change everything. Right? So enjoy the rest of the day. Again, it's a pleasure to be with you. And Imran, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.